don't know, the topic that was given to me was just this, data. So it's like that you can talk about everything and you can talk about nothing. So I've taken some kind of a middle out approach. First of all, because I had a problem trying to gauge what your understanding of the topic of analytics really is. And therefore, what I will do is I will start right from the very basics. And I had also planned to cover this entire topic of data in 2 sessions, but apparently one session I think will have to be taken later. Huh? Acha. Okay. तो वो जेएम कह रहे हैं कि वो हिंदी और इंग्लिश मिक्स बोलना है, तो ठीक है, इंग्लिश में बोलेंगे. Anyway, so let's try to look at this. But I believe that you've had some sessions on data visualization, and you have been introduced to some tools like the Tableau Public, and in fact there are other visualization tools also which are available now. But in the big data course that we have here, we do it the hard way. So we show the students how to program visualizations using toolboxes like or languages like R. So हमारे जो big data course है उसमें हम लोग R यूज करके दिखाते हैं कि कैसे हम लोग प्रोग्राम कर सकते हैं visualizations को. But of course these tools are there which are very handy because you can just dump in your data and they will generate the visualizations for you. So since you've already seen the practical part of the visualization, that's how to create those visualizations, तो इसके पीछे कुछ थ्योरी पार्ट जो है वो मैं यहाँ कोशिश करूँगा कवर करने की कि किस तरह के विजुलाइजेशंस होते हैं और कौन सा विजुलाइजेशन हम लोग कब यूज़ कर सकते हैं. तो क्योंकि विजुलाइजेशन की बात चल रही है तो मैं इनफैक्ट एक विजुलाइजेशन के स्टार्ट करता हूँ. So what you see here is a visualization of data, and what you see here is something called flip analysis. So what the point that I'm trying to actually make here is that the picture actually conveys a lot of information that you would not be able to get by looking at numbers alone. So what is this flip analysis here? यहाँ पे आप ये देखिए कि 2014 में जो इलेक्शंस हुए थे, ये बेसिकली ये कल के स्टैट्स हैं. तो 2014 में जो इलेक्शंस हुए थे उसमें बीजेपी जो थी उसको 282 सीट्स मिले थे, राइट? तो यहाँ पे आप 282 स्क्वायर्स देखेंगे और कांग्रेस को शायद 44 मिले थे, तो यहाँ 44 स्क्वायर्स देखेंगे और बाकी जो सीट्स थी वो बाकी पार्टीज को गई तो उनके स्क्वायर्स इधर हैं. Right now, what has been done is that the results of the election, the elections that were held this year, they have been superimposed on these blocks. वो कैसे कि अब बीजेपी को जो सीट्स मिली हैं वो सारी ऑरेंज कलर्ड है. तो अब आप ये देख सकते हैं कि वर्सेस 2014 कौन सी सीट्स जो कांग्रेस को मिली थी अब बीजेपी को चली गई, कौन सी सीट्स जो दूसरों को मिली थी वो अब बीजेपी को चली गई, और बीजेपी की कौन सी सीट्स थी वो अब कांग्रेस के पास चली गई, जो लाइट ब्लू में यहाँ पे है, लाइट ब्लू में. सो कुछ सीटें जो हैं जो बीजेपी के पास थी वो कांग्रेस के पास चली गई और कुछ जो कांग्रेस के पास थी वो बीजेपी को थी आ गई और इधर से भी बीजेपी के पास आ गई. तो एक तरह से द प्रोपोर्शन ऑफ स्क्वायर्स विच हैव कम टू बीजेपी फ्रॉम अदर्स is much more than the proportion of squares which have actually gone out. You can see that. And therefore you can also draw a conclusion that the number of seats that BJP gained this year in the elections is much more than what it has actually lost. Okay. So this is something called flip analysis. But this one picture actually conveys so much more information, which you probably would not get if you just looked at the count of the number of seats that BJP has won or the Congress has won or the others. Okay, in fact, in this elections, a large number of such visualizations were deployed, and if you had gone through the various newspapers, you would see some of these visualizations. In fact, I will also run through some more later on, but here is another visualization which is basically what we call the seat share analysis. So here is the map of India, and these squares, they represent the states. So within a particular state you can see that there are different colors which have been employed. Okay, so for instance, if you look at this particular state, which is Punjab, you can see the vote share that has, or the number of seats which have gone to BJP versus those which have gone to Congress, right? So, and then of course there is that white part which is the AAP, which won one seat. तो यहाँ पे भी आप देख सकते हैं कि state wise कैसे distribution हुआ seats का. तो you can see that these are states where BJP has had a clean sweep. They won all the seats. There is nobody else, right? So again, the idea is to show you a picture that is conveying so much more information than numbers themselves. Okay, so you can see how the alliance has fared, you can see how the BJP has fared, and so on. So that's what visualization is all about. But then this also brings us to this point that numbers alone are not sufficient. Okay, so we have data at one end, and data could be in any form garnered from or taken from any source. The sources can be anything, right, or any domain that you are interested in. For example, it could be cultural, it could be financial, it could be something related to your subject of study, whatever. But initially, when you gather data, the data is generally in some kind of numeric or symbolic form, right, which does not usually carry any interpretation with it. So that is where it all begins, the story all begins. Okay, but then because you have to make sense out of what is going on, you need to go through this one pyramid. And that is the pyramid which is called the DIKW pyramid. So wherein the data that you begin with gets transformed into or abstracted into something that you can utilize at a much, much higher level. So in this pyramid, you go through the process of transforming data to information, right? And that is done through identifying relationships between data. And the fundamental question that you end up answering here is what? What is the data all about? Okay. But then when you have collected the data, you try to identify patterns in the data, and thereby you derive knowledge. Okay. So therein then you can answer the question, how did something happen? Okay. And then finally, you would combine many such patterns into, or abstract many such patterns into what is called wisdom, wherein you would be able to answer the question, why? Why did something happen? Okay. So what happened? Right? How did it happen? And why did it happen? So the ultimate analysis that takes place only happens when you get to the wisdom part, wherein you are able to basically see the root cause of something happening. Okay, so just to give you a small example here, suppose you are at a traffic light, right? And you're reaching a traffic light, and in fact you end up seeing these numbers. Okay, so these are the numbers that are presented to your system. Let us say you have an automated system with you, and those numbers are what are generated by that automated system. So basically it says that there is a red light here, and these are essentially the coordinates of the red light. Okay, that is what it is. But then when you try to relate this data to answer the question what, you end up or try to extract meaning out of this data, then you come up with this particular statement that the south facing traffic light on the corner of Pitt and George streets had turned red. Okay, so you're trying to relate it to some other pieces of information that you have with us. For example, you have street names and you're trying to relate the coordinates to street names and the fact that the red light which is on that street has turned red. Okay, but then where you take this and apply it to a context, you are actually traveling. Okay, so the context is your travel, that is the context. तो उस context में जब इस data को apply करते हैं तो आप ये conclude करते हैं कि जिस traffic light की तरफ आप जा रहे हैं वो red हो गई है. Okay, so you can see how you are able to now move on to the next stage wherein you are able to identify a much larger picture. And then finally the wisdom dawns when you see that you have to stop the car and you apply the brakes. Okay, so you can see how you transition from this to that. Now this is also the analytics game. When we talk about analytics, which I'll try to define later on, this is essentially what we are trying to do. We are trying to go from data to a point wherein the user can simply take whatever we are presenting to him and apply in the context of decision making. Okay, or apply it to decision making. That is what we want. But we understand that the decision making ultimately has to be done by the user because the interpretation of whatever we present has to be done in context. Okay, तो जैसे मैंने आपको ये बताया ये context कि आपने ये तो information तो generate कर दी data से, लेकिन वो information जो है वो जिस context में user है उसमें कैसे apply होगी, वो part जो है वो generally user खुद अपने आप कर सकता है. और ये जो ऑटोमेटेड सिस्टम्स हैं ये खाली सजेस्ट कर सकते हैं. और विजडम भी सब कुछ ऐसी चीज है जो कि अभी इट्स नॉट इन द रेल्म ऑफ द ऑटोमेटेड सिस्टम्स बट इट इज मोर isolated to human systems, and therefore that is also something which we will have to leave to the humans for the time being. And that is the hard part. That is the hard part कि आप ऑटोमेटेड सिस्टम के थ्रू बहुत सारी इंफॉर्मेशन प्रेजेंट तो कर सकते हैं, अलग अलग तरीकों से प्रेजेंट कर सकते हैं, लेकिन जब तक कोई एक एक्सपर्ट या यूज़र ह्यूमन यूज़र जो है वो उसको करेक्ट कॉन्टेक्स्ट में इंटरप्रेट करके डिसीजन मेकिंग में अप्लाई ना कर पाए तब तक कोई फ़ायदा नहीं है. नथिंग कम्स आउट ऑफ इट. ओके, सो with analytics, that is one huge problem that is still being faced and people are still trying to work with it. Okay, so here we are talking about data, and data is something that you are very familiar with because आपने अपने context में, जैसे for example आप schools में, तो schools में भी आप data collect करते हैं students के बारे में. तो for example आप demographic data collect करते हैं, right? तो स्कूल में डेमोग्राफिक डेटा किस तरह का डेटा होगा? डेटा विल बी बेसिकली कि शहर में आपके किस एरिया से कौन सा स्टूडेंट आया, किस जगह से कौन सा, किस लोकेलिटी से कौन सा स्टूडेंट आया, और वो लोकेलिटीज फिर आप जो है वो आप यूज कर सकते हैं आइडेंटिफाई करने के लिए कि किस रीजन या सिटी के किस रीजन से हमारे मैक्सिमम नंबर ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स आए, और फिर उस पर आप फर्दर एनालिसिस कर सकते हैं कि क्यों. Right? How is it? The next question, of course, you can go to the how part is how is it that people there from this particular region are more, in our class, school than any other school? And then, of course, you can, if you are able to answer that question and you are able to observe the patterns, then you can go on to the wisdom stage. तो इसमें आप ये देख सकते हैं, for example, कि जितने भी students वो आए, they are within a 3 kilometer radius. So one of the things that would have probably motivated the students to apply to your school was simply the distance factor. Okay, that could be a very simple reason. But of course, this is what analysis is all about. But data in itself, if we try to look at it, one of the things that is becoming more and more important now is the sheer size or the volume of data that is available. And that brings us to what we call big data. So as of now, the data that you have been dealing with, the data that you have been working with is something that you have been able to manage with the kind of systems that you have already in place. Okay, for example, आप एक रेलवे रिजर्वेशन सिस्टम के बारे में बात करते हैं तो रेलवे रिजर्वेशन सिस्टम में बहुत सारा डेटा है, लेकिन वो डेटा जो है वो एक ट्रेडिशनल सिस्टम में वो स्टोर्ड है यूजिंग ट्रेडिशनल डेटाबेसेस और वो वहाँ पे बहुत इफेक्टिवली मैनेज हो रहा है. लेकिन टुडे वी हैव मूव्ड ऑन टू द रेल्म ऑफ व्हाट इज कॉल्ड बिग डेटा. तो बिग डेटा की एक बहुत सिंपल डेफिनेशन ये है कि इट रेफर्स टू डेटा सेट्स whose size is beyond the ability of typical database software tools to capture, store, manage, analyze. So not only is the size that is a problem, there are other factors as well, but the fact that the size becomes so large that it is not possible for you to analyze quickly the data that you have for the purpose of generating things like information and of course knowledge. Okay, so that is what big data is all about. But there are certain defining characteristics of big data. So there are basically three, but we will extend it to 4 characteristics. So here you are looking at 3 characteristics. The first thing is the velocity, the speed at which the data is created, right? The speed at which the data is created is tremendous. So I'll give you a small idea of the speed at which the data is created in a short while. And then we have what is called the volume, the amount of data that is generated, the quantity of data that is generated. The sheer volume of data is again humongous, बहुत ज़्यादा है. And then of course we have variety. तो अभी तक जितना भी डेटा आप लोग देखते आए हैं अपने स्कूल में भी और कहीं किसी और कॉन्टेक्स्ट में भी, वो डेटा जो है एक तरह से जिसे हम कहते हैं स्ट्रक्चर्ड डेटा है कि वो बहुत नीटली जो है टेबल्स में फिट हो जाता है, राइट? बट डेटा, द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ डेटा इज नॉट जस्ट लिमिटेड टू व्हाट कैन बी स्ट्रक्चर्ड इनटू टेबल्स. नाउ यू हैव व्हाट आर कॉल्ड सेमी स्ट्रक्चर्ड एंड अनस्ट्रक्चर्ड डेटा ऑल्सो, wherein you have things like documents, text, right? For example, somebody would have tweeted something, somebody would have posted something on his Facebook page. All that is data, and that is something you would want to analyze. Why would you want to analyze, let's say, Facebook data or tweets? For that matter, why would any organization want to analyze tweets? So, let's take the example that you have launched a product and you want to know how many people are talking about it. Okay. And then over a period of time, you want to see that number. You want to know whether more and more people are talking about it or fewer people are talking about it. तो अगर जो number of people who are talking about it वो कम होता जाता है तो इसका मतलब कि आपके प्रोडक्ट की जो क्वालिटी है, पॉपुलैरिटी है, वो खत्म हो गई, राइट? Just when you have launched it, in a short while if it goes, it means that your product has actually failed. लेकिन जो डेटा ट्वीट्स में अवेलेबल है वो टेक्सचुअल डेटा है, तो इसका मतलब कि उसमें से हमको ये इंफॉर्मेशन एक्सट्रैक्ट करनी पड़ेगी कि वो जो ट्वीट है वो आपके प्रोडक्ट को रेफर कर रहा है या नहीं, राइट? सो दैट काइंड ऑफ डेटा इज one kind of data. But then you have things like videos, you have audio. You would want to analyze that data as well. For example, you've got a surveillance system, so much video data is flowing in, and you want to be able to analyze that data. For example, you want to be able to see who has come into the building, who has not come into the building, right? You would want to recognize faces so that you are able to use them for different purposes. So all that is data, but that data falls in the realm of what is called unstructured data. unstructured data. Okay, the data which has no structure, something that you cannot fit in neatly into a table. Okay, so once you have a table, then everything becomes very simple. But that is something you can't fit into a table. Okay, but you would still want to analyze it, and you would want to do things with it. So this is just to give you an idea of the sheer velocity and the volume at which data is generated. For example, the time period here, or the time frame that we are talking about here, is 1 minute. 1 minute. Okay, so in 1 minute, you have 17,36,111 Instagram pictures uploaded, right? You have 3,47,000 tweets, 300 hours of video is uploaded, and you have so many crores of emails that are transacted in 1 minute. So all this is data that people are interested in. And the biggest organization that is interested in all this is Google. Today, Google is tracking you completely. So, for example, if you have logged in onto your phone, into your account, Google knows everything about you. Have you tried to open the news portal or the YouTube portal and seen things like recommended for you? How does it know what I want to see or what I want to read? Because it is maintaining a complete history of what you are doing on the portals. It is tracking everything. It is tracking your interests, your visits, your emails, everything. Why is it that when you open your Gmail account, Google is able to show you very pinpointed ads? So if you open up a mail related to education, right, in AI, you will see all advertisements related to education and AI. Okay, so in fact, there is a lot of AI actually which is being put into practice. So they are able to filter the kind of information that is there in the emails, and they are able to then do or present contextually the kind of advertisements that would be applicable to that particular topic. Okay. So there is a lot of things going on there. In fact, you would have also noticed, I don't know, कि अगर आपके पास फॉर एग्जाम्पल एक कॉन्फ्रेंस का नोटिफिकेशन आता है, सो इवन बिफोर यू नो इट इज देयर इन योर कैलेंडर. वो कॉन्फ्रेंस जो किसकी मेल आपकी आई है वो आपके कैलेंडर में ऑलरेडी है, राइट? वो कैसे हुआ? अब गूगल ने दे हैव क्रिएटेड व्हाट इज कॉल्ड एन एजेंट बेस्ड सिस्टम. तो आप ये सोचिए कि आपके साथ एक एजेंट एसोसिएटेड है. ओके, दिस इज व्हाट एआई इज ऑल अबाउट. एक एजेंट एसोसिएटेड है जो कि ये ट्रैक कर रहा है कि आपके पास क्या मेल्स आ रही हैं, उसमें उसका क्या कंटेंट है. सो फॉर इंस्टेंस, अगर आपके पास एक कॉन्फ्रेंस की एक्सेप्टेंस आती है, तो वो एजेंट जो है उसमें से देख रहा है कि क्या डेट है, क्या वेन्यू है, राइट? और उसके हिसाब से वो एक्शंस ले रहा है. सबसे पहले उसने कैलेंडर में एंट्री कर दिया आपकी. उसके बाद नेक्स्ट स्टेज पे अगर आप चाहेंगे तो वो आपकी सारी आइटिनरी प्लान कर सकता है. वो ये डिसाइड कर सकता है कि आप कैसे ट्रैवल करेंगे यहां से उस जगह पे, और क्या मोड आपके लिए बेस्ट होगा, वहां पे किस होटल में जाके रहेंगे, और अगर आप चाहें तो सारी बुकिंग्स आपके लिए कर देगा. ओके, so as you okay things, you say okay, this mode is okay to me, this date is acceptable to me, this time is acceptable to me. All the bookings are done for you at the back. You only have to go and pay. That is agent based computing. Okay, that is again in the realm of AI. So you have intelligent agents which are able to track everything that you do, and they are able to suggest everything for you. So in a way, all that headache of planning is off your head. It is not with you anymore. Okay, but that is something you are already seeing here. It is there. It is just that you have to start, accepting what it has to offer, and then you will be able to utilize or make use of all these utilities. So that is the kind of thing that Google is interested in and Google wants to do for you. But in a way, there are a lot of other issues also here. For example, privacy. How much of your privacy are you willing to compromise on? Okay. But leaving aside those issues, this is your big data stuff. So here is a very small example of unstructured data. I told you that text is unstructured, and at the other end you have these tables which are all structured data. लेकिन बीच में semi structured है. The semi-structured, I don't know how many of you are familiar with HTML. Okay, so HTML, you have tags. So in tags जो हैं, वो tags ये रहे. For example, यहाँ पे university लिखा हुआ है, student ID लिखा हुआ है, ये tags हैं. But ये HTML नहीं है, ये this is called the extended markup language or XML. तो इसको हम लोग use कर सकते हैं अपना data define करने के लिए. And that is what is used to exchange data between, let us say, two computers, okay, or two software systems. तो यहाँ पे आप ये देखेंगे कि tags जो हैं एक तरह से they provide you with what is called an outer structure, okay, but the inside is all free form कि आप क्या text उसमें डालना चाह रहे हैं वो तो पूरा आपके ऊपर dependent है और आप कुछ भी डाल सकते हैं. तो उस पर कोई structure नहीं है, लेकिन वो टेक्स्ट क्या है उस पे स्ट्रक्चर है. तो स्ट्रक्चर क्या है कि हम यूनिवर्सिटी के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं और ये एक स्टूडेंट की इंफॉर्मेशन है, ये उसका नाम है, लेकिन अंदर में जो जॉन लिखा हुआ है यहाँ कुछ भी हो सकता है. दैट इज व्हाट वी कॉल द इनर सिंटैक्स. ओके, सो द आउटर सिंटैक्स इज स्ट्रक्चर्ड, द इनर सिंटैक्स इज फ्री फॉर्म. दैट्स द डिफरेंस. सो देयर इज सम स्ट्रक्चर, यू कैन मेक सेंस आउट ऑफ व्हाट इज बीइंग प्रेजेंटेड and you can do a lot of processing very easily, but it is very different from this unstructured data wherein everything is free form and you have to literally go word by word to try to figure out what is happening there. Okay, so there's one more aspect to big data that we would like to add here, and that's called veracity or the truthfulness. So a lot of information is available now, but the point is that data acceptable for the purpose that we have at hand, or we should throw it away because the sources are not trustworthy? Okay, so that is one question that we need to answer even when we are trying to access information over the internet. तो internet पे इतनी सारी information available है, तो क्या information जो है वो हम लोग लेके अपने document में refer कर सकते हैं, क्या नहीं कर सकते. आपको यह पता होना चाहिए कि कोई भी टेक्निकल डॉक्यूमेंट है उसमें आप विकिपीडिया का भी रेफरेंस नहीं डाल सकते. इट इज नॉट एक्सेप्टेबल. ओके, तो इस तरह से क्या चीज एक्सेप्टेबल है क्या नहीं है वो भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली अगर हम कोई भी एनालिसिस करते हैं और उसको डिसीजन मेकिंग के लिए यूज करते हैं, अगर वो एक अनट्रस्टवर्दी सोर्स से आ रहा है तो वो बेकार है. देन इट हैज नो मीनिंग, इट हैज नो वर्थ. So we have to be very careful about these sources of data. Okay, so what are the major sources of data? Where is this big data coming from? Well, largely, in fact, most of the data that is coming now is from the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things. How many of you understand what the term Internet of Things means? Anybody? So what would become an Internet of Things and what would not be an Internet of Things? So is this an Internet of Things? Right. Is my phone an Internet of Thing? Yes. Is this an Internet of Thing? No. How do I convert it into an Internet of Thing? By? But the chip should have a purpose, no? What is the purpose of the chip? किस लिए? See, I want to convert this. I want to convert this into. This is a simple, laser pointer. I want to convert this laser pointer into an Internet of Things. Huh? Connected to the internet, great. So that's one aspect. We need to connect it to the internet. But then, by merely connecting this to the internet, what have we achieved? No, not yet.
Anywhere. We can use it anytime and anywhere by using internet.
See, first thing is there are two aspects to this. There are exactly two aspects to this. First thing is what somebody pointed out, that you need to convert it to the internet, connected to the internet, right? That's the first thing. But the second most important thing is that you need to provide it with senses. So you got 5 senses, right? The sight, the hearing, the smell, the touch. So you need to provide it with the senses. So which sense you are going to provide it with, that depends on the item that you have with you. So the first thing is you provide it with the senses, and the second thing is that you provide it with the means to communicate what it has sensed. Okay, so that's why we need to connect it to the internet. Otherwise, it is not an Internet of Things. And these are only two things that you need to be able to convert it into an Internet of Things. Right? So one of the biggest components of items that make up the Internet of Things are the sensors themselves. The sensors. The sensors are what are ultimately providing you with so much data which you are able to utilize for different purposes. You have sensors everywhere. For example, today let us suppose I pick up let's say a Mercedes Benz, okay, a car. How many sensors do you think would that car be fitted with so that it provides you with it's able to generate the information that is needed to make sure that the car runs smoothly? How many do you think would be there? Well, it's the order of 400 sensors, and they are monitoring everything, right from your engine speed to tire pressure to your temperature in the portion that you are sitting, and all that information is used for what? For control. For control. For example, in a Mercedes Benz now, every individual person can have his own environment control. Okay. So if you are sitting in one corner, you can have your own temperature, the other person can have his own temperature, and so on and so forth. But how does that happen? So unless until we have a temperature sensor which is able to feed back into some kind of a controller, then that control on the temperature cannot be affected. Okay, but that sensor becomes an IoT because it is able to sense the temperature and it is able to communicate that temperature. So these are the only two things you need. You want to convert this into an IoT, you need this to provide this with sensors, okay, something which will be able to sense something of interest and be able to communicate that. But then now you see, when you say that these are only two things that you need to provide, then everything can be converted into an IoT. I can convert this. How? I need a sensor here to tell me whether this is full or empty. Okay, and as soon as it is empty, it sends me a message saying that it is empty, and then I call up somebody to fill it up, or my agent does it automatically for me. Okay, it automatically calls up my somebody in my office who goes and fills it up and puts it back, but then I should know that it's empty. Okay, but then because it has the ability to communicate, then I could be sitting anywhere. You know, I could be sitting, let's say, geographically at a very distant location and still be able to see what is happening, and which is what, for example, is the kind of thing that people are envisaging with, let's say, smart homes and smart cities. तो स्मार्ट होम में एक सबसे पहली चीज आप क्या चाहेंगे कि आपके फ्रिज में जो सब्जी है वो भरी रहे, है ना? तो सब्जी का कंटेनर जो है वो जैसे ही खाली होगा, then the message should automatically go to your local vendor to supply the stuff and give it to you. So it comes to you even before you are able to see that the container is empty. It is there at your doorstep. Oh, that is convenience. That's what we want. Ultimately, all human beings are बिल्कुल आराम पसंद ना, तो यही तो चाहिए कि हमारे पास ये सारे ऑटोमेटेड एजेंट्स हो जो सारा काम करते हैं, लेकिन उसके लिए हमको क्या चाहिए? IoT चाहिए. That's what we want. Okay, so that's the only ingredient that you need, but then you are able to do so much with it, so much. In fact, for example, now you have those fuzzy washing machines and things like that, which are able to do so many things, but because they have so many sensors and they're able to sense and take care of so many things, right? So IoT is, in fact, much of the kind of data that we call big data has actually been generated in the past 3 to 4 years. Not before that. Before that, we only had structured data. But with the proliferation of these IoT devices, now big data is everywhere. And to the point that people don't know what to do with it. There is so much data available with it. That is so much data which is available. So अब ये बात हो रही है कि ये डेटा कैसे हम लोग कम करें जिससे कि हम लोग इसके साथ डील कर सकें. तो एक तरीका ये है कि आप जहां पे वो जनरेट हो रहा है वहीं पे एनालिटिक्स कर दीजिए. इंस्टेड ऑफ फर्स्ट कलेक्टिंग डेटा एंड देन डूइंग द एनालिटिक्स, आप वहीं पे एनालिटिक्स कर दीजिए. तो वहां पे ही आप सारी चीजें फिल्टर कर दिए, जितना चाहिए उसको आगे भेजिए और उसको फिर आप दूसरे पर्पस के लिए आप उसको यूज करिए. सो दैट्स कॉल्ड इन सोर्स एनालिटिक्स. ओके, बट यू कैन सी द पॉसिबिलिटी हियर इज अनलिमिटेड, right? So whatever kind of data we have manageable data or structured data or unstructured data or whatever data. This data is not a static entity. Data move, or every piece of data has its own life cycle. It has its own life cycle. Okay? And that life cycle is what you see here. But before I talk about this, you should also understand that unstructured data is also the kind of data which Google is analyzing to be able to use in your search engines, in its search engine I should say. Okay, तो search engines जो हैं वो कैसे काम करते हैं, वहां पे ये डेटा एनालिसिस कैसे होती है और डेटा कैसे यूज होता है. कोई भी सर्च इंजन, जैसे गूगल आप सर्च इंजन यूज करते हैं या बिंग यूज करें या कोई और यूज करें, तो इसमें ये कैसे काम करते हैं. तो इसमें क्या होता है कि देयर आर स्पेशल सॉफ्टवेयर सिस्टम विच आर कॉल्ड वेब क्रॉलर्स और स्पाइडर्स. तो ये लोग क्या करते हैं, ये लोग पेजेस एक्सेस, ये सॉफ्टवेयर क्या करता है, पेजेस एक्सेस करता है. फॉर एग्जांपल एक पेज एक्सेस किया, जैसे कि DI की वेबसाइट है, उसका होम पेज, वहां पे जितने भी लिंक्स एम्बेडेड हैं फिर वो उनको ट्रेवर्स करता है, राइट? और इस तरह से वो डिफरेंट पेजेस को विजिट करता है. हर पेज को जो विजिट करता है वो पूरी तरह से स्कैन करता है और उसमें जो कीवर्ड्स हैं, कीवर्ड्स उनको एक्सट्रैक्ट करके वो एक डेटाबेस में डाल देता है, डेटाबेस में डाल देता है. सो दोज कीवर्ड्स नाउ एक्ट लाइक इंडेक्सेस इनटू योर पेजेस, इनटू योर पेजेस. सो फॉर एग्जांपल, अगर हमने अपने होम पेज में कोई कॉन्फ्रेंस का अनाउंसमेंट डाला है, तो दैट कॉन्फ्रेंस अनाउंसमेंट विल बिकम, या द वर्ड कॉन्फ्रेंस विल बिकम अ कीवर्ड टू और इंडेक्स इनटू योर पेज. तो कोई भी कॉन्फ्रेंस टाइप करेगा तो उसको आपका पेज दिखना चाहिए. लेकिन अब जितने भी पेजेस, जितने भी लिंक्स आते हैं, जब आप सर्च करते हैं, उनकी एक ऑर्डरिंग होती है, कुछ सबसे ऊपर आते हैं, कुछ नीचे आते हैं. तो वो कैसे होता है, तो उसके लिए गूगल यूजेस अ कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ व्हाट इज कॉल्ड पेज रैंक. अब पेज रैंक समझने के लिए इट्स प्रीटी सिंपल. यू थिंक ऑफ इट लाइक अ वोटिंग स्कीम, वोटिंग. सो फॉर एग्जांपल ये आपका पेज है, राइट? कितने और पेजेस इस पेज को लिंक कर रहे हैं, राइट? एक चीज वो है. दूसरी चीज, जो पेजेस आपके पेज को पॉइंट कर रहे हैं उनकी पॉपुलैरिटी क्या है, राइट? सो नंबर ऑफ लिंक्स दैट आर डायरेक्टेड टुवर्ड्स योर पेज, द पॉपुलैरिटी ऑफ द पेजेस themselves which are linking to your page, that sums up to give you what is called a page rank. तो जिन पेजेस की पेज रैंक ज़्यादा होती है वो सबसे ऊपर आते हैं, जिनकी कम होती है वो पीछे आते जाती हैं. लेकिन अनफॉर्चुनेटली क्या होता है कि आप उन्हीं पेजेस को देखते हैं जो ऊपर में आते हैं, जो पहले आते हैं, बाद वालों को आप देखते नहीं हैं. और ऐसे कितने पेजेस हैं जो कि वेब पे एग्जिस्ट करते हैं जिनको आप कभी नहीं देखते. और कुछ पेजेस ऐसे भी हैं वो आप एक्सेस नहीं कर पाते क्योंकि वो क्या है, वो लॉक्ड हैं. दे आर लॉक्ड इन बाय पासवर्ड्स एंड थिंग्स लाइक दैट. So that is what those pages are, what constitute what is called the deep web, and that makes up 90% of the total number of pages that are there, that are out there. 90%, the deep web, and that is something that you never see or never will see, and there's a lot of information there which would be useful to you. Okay, so this is what is called the data life cycle here, and the data life cycle is something that is reflected almost in everything that we do. For example, if you look at the analytics life cycle, you'll see that this there. If you look at the big data life cycle, you'll see this there. So in a way, this is an abstraction of what you would see in every situation where you are dealing with data. Okay, so the first thing is the acquisition. You need to acquire the data. So basically it's all about capturing data. So for capturing data, whatever means you have with you, you will end up using that. For example, if you're doing some kind of a survey, then you would probably have questionnaires. The questionnaires are what you would end up using to capture data. Okay, but data it's not necessary that you capture data using these kind of means. If you have, for example, any IoT system attached to your system, the IoT system will be always feeding data to you. Okay, it is continuously feeding data to you. So that is the acquisition part. But the next step is important in the sense that we need to clean the data to make sure that it is usable. This is one of the most important and the most ignored part of the data life cycle, the cleaning part. Okay, so you have to make sure that the data is in a form which is usable and that it has the necessary properties of correctness and completeness. Okay, that is important. So we need to be able to organize, filter, annotate, clean everything. Once you've done that, then comes the use part. How you would end up using it will depend entirely in the context in which the data has to be applied. Okay, so if we are talking about an analytics life cycle, for example, analytics. तो एनालिटिक्स हम लोग क्यों करते हैं? Though in fact there are three reasons why we want to do it. In fact that also distinguishes the kind of analytics that we want to do, and one of them is what is called the predictive analytics or prediction. So one of the things that we want to do with the data that we have with us currently is to be able to predict what is going to happen in the future. Okay, तो prediction के लिए हम लोग को क्या करना पड़ेगा? हमको मॉडलिंग करनी पड़ेगी, हमको किसी तरह से कोई एक मॉडल डेवलप करना पड़ेगा. यूजुअली दैट इज अ मैथमेटिकल मॉडल, अ मॉडल विच आई कैन यूज टू फोरकास्ट, टू प्रिडिक्ट. ओके, एंड दैट मॉडल हैज टू बी एक्सट्रैक्टेड फ्रॉम द डेटा विच वी हैव विद अस. दिस इज वेयर AI or machine learning comes into picture. Okay, so in the model building part. So you have to extract the model out of the data, right, and then be able to use that. So that is where you will be. This is where all this is focused. So that's the use and the reuse part. Of course, once you have done everything, you would want to publish your data, right, somewhere. You will want to make it available to people. So that's what publishing is all about. So dissemination, right, creation of portals, writing papers, things like that. So all that would come here, and then of course finally you would want to archive it, you want to preserve it. So that is where the last steps comes into picture. अब इसमें हम लोग किस चीज पे फोकस करते हैं, राइट, किस चीज पे फोकस करते हैं वो डिफाइन करेगा इन टर्म्स को भी. So where does it, so you would have come across a large number of terms like these: data science, data analytics, big data, right? And then of course you have other things like machine learning, right? So where does this all fit in into the big picture? So let's try to understand that. So data science is the umbrella term. It covers all the steps that we have been talking about here, everything. So data science is something that talks about all of this, and at the same time it talks about these issues as well. Stewardship, stewardship is management, all the ethics related issues, the policy related issues, the regulatory frameworks that would enable you to be able to use or not use the data, that will also come to be a part of your data science. So data science is covering everything. Okay, that's the main thing. Then we have analytics. Analytics is focused on discovery, interpretation, communication of meaningful patterns. So where exactly does analytics fit in? Analytics is more concentrated in this part, the use part. So wherein we will look at the data, try to model the data, use the model for interpretation and things like that. So that is where analytics comes in. Okay, and then of course the sheer size of data that you are dealing with will decide whether it is big data or it is not big data. So if the data has the properties that we talked about, it is big data, otherwise it is not. So here you have lot of fields that are mentioned, starting with the data analytics here, then you have big data, and you have methods and algorithms here. Okay, so these are essentially talking about the nature of data and the things that you would use to manipulate data. Okay, so the methods and the algorithms. But then there are specific areas of interest, namely the data mining, right, the machine learning. All of these, when you put them together, they come to be what is called the big data analytics, right? But like I told you, the analytics part is focused more on the use and the reuse rather than at any other portion. Okay, so it is the discovery, interpretation, communication of meaningful patterns in the data. You're trying to analyze the data there. So I'll give you a very simple example of how things fit in here. So for example, आप लोग सब Easy Day गए, कोई भी एक departmental store गए, Easy Day या Big Bazaar या whatever. Everybody is gone there. Okay. So that was a redundant question. But anyway, would you have noticed that sometimes when you walk in, at the entrance you see a shelf with some kinds of things, and the next time you go you find that shelves have changed with some other kinds of things. So why does that happen? Why did they do it? You were accustomed to going at some corner of the store and picking up something that you wanted. The next time you went there, you found that the shelf was missing from there. It had moved away to some other place. Why did that happen? Okay, so this is one place where we can distinguish all these terms here, everything that you see here, right? So for every customer, what is the departmental store doing? It is tracking the buying patterns. It is trying to track what you have bought, right? First thing. So that is the data part. कि आपने क्या खरीदा. The next part is the information part, the relation part, wherein they are trying to see कि आपने किस चीज के साथ क्या खरीदा. जब आपने वहां पे जाके मैगी खरीदी तो मैगी के साथ और क्या खरीदा. That is relationship. Okay, so it is not just what you have bought. What are the things that you have bought together is what is important. Then they are going to the next level wherein they are trying to look at patterns of purchases. What is the general pattern of purchasing that is taking place in the store? Okay, so what are the items that people end up buying most when they come into the store? What are the things that they don't generally end up buying? Okay, And what are the things that people would end up picking up at the last minute? Okay. And what are the things that we can, sort of force people to buy when they are just about to leave the store? So all this information is going into deciding what is to be placed when you enter the store. Obviously, they would place what you those things when you enter the store is what is bought most frequently. And then, of course, what should be placed before with that? Anything that the pattern or the relationship suggests that is bought with the thing that you buy most. तो जो चीज आप खरीदते हैं सबसे ज्यादा, मैगी के साथ आप टूथपेस्ट खरीदते हैं तो टूथपेस्ट जो है वो उसके साथ उसका शेल्फ लगा दिया जाएगा. Okay, so you have Maggie and then you have toothpaste, right? In fact, this was a very interesting study that was carried out in Walmart, wherein they actually discovered from this data that the items that were being bought most frequently together were diapers and beer. Diapers and beer. So when they went back to try to see why was this happening, they found that most of the purchases of diapers, because the mothers could not come to the store, the fathers were going and purchasing, and every time they bought a diaper, they went and bought a beer. Okay, so what they did was they kept the two together and the sales just zoomed up. Because those who were not interested in buying oil. Hello. Okay. Those who were not interested in buying, they were also somehow, forced to look at the beer and buy that. So that's something that came out of the relationship that was actually mined. So they use these AI techniques to discover these relationships, the associations. Okay, so data mining is all about discovering these relationships, right? And that is something which all these stores are doing now frequently to be able to make sure that they put the shelves in the right order. Okay, so for example, if you enter the Easy Day store here, you will find that it's all clothes first. Right? People buy a lot of clothes. Agra, every second shop is a cloth shop. Yeah. ये क्या हो गया? Anyway, so that's one thing. The other thing is that you can employ a large number of machine learning features, in the sense that you can build a model out of this data, that is the purchase data, and then be able to try to predict that if a person has bought something, what is the next thing that he's going to buy. You can try to forecast sales. You can try to look for seasonal patterns and see what are the kind of things that I need to keep in the store and what are the kind of things I don't need to keep in the store. At what point in time, in which season. So all that comes through analytics. Okay? But then of course the data has to flow through all the stages, and that is where you have this umbrella of data science that comes into picture. Okay, so once again I represent this data science mainly because I want to focus on these two aspects of analytics, wherein once we have the data with us, what we start with is what is called exploratory analysis. We will want to know what kind of relationships exist between the data, and then we can try to model that data. In modeling the data is where we would apply things like data mining, machine learning, all the AI techniques that we have been talking about, or which you will learn in this course. In fact, I believe there is one lecture on machine learning. There is also one lecture after my lecture here on machine learning. So I think you should be able to make most of that particular lecture. Okay, so coming to analytics, what is the kind of analytics that we can carry out? There are three kinds of analytics. One is descriptive, then we have predictive, and then we have prescriptive. So descriptive analytics focuses on what, predictive is talking about what can happen in the future, and prescriptive, as you can see, is trying to talk about what should really happen. Okay, so for example, if we go back to our store example here, once you have collected the data, you can do simple descriptive analytics ki which item had what sale. Okay. Over a period of time, you can do some kind of, you can compute means, you can compute standard deviations, you can do all those kind of things. You can generate all kinds of descriptive statistics that would come under that would be in the focus of descriptive analytics. But then, if you try to project sales, if you try to determine what would be the demand for a particular product so that you can stock it up, then that would be predictive analytics. तो predictive analytics करने के लिए, for example, आप ये जानना चाहते हैं कि 10 दिन बाद मेरे एक particular product की demand क्या होगी, ताकि मैं ये decide करूं कि कितना stock उसको कर लें. तो इसके लिए हमको क्या करना पड़ेगा? इसके लिए हमको कोई एक predictive model build करना पड़ेगा. तो आप लोग ने रिग्रेशन पढ़ा हुआ है सबने, उतनी स्टैटिस्टिक्स तो पढ़ी हुई होगी सबने. तो एक रिग्रेशन मॉडल इज लाइक, द रिग्रेशन मॉडल इज लाइक अ प्रेडिक्टिव मॉडल. ओके, सो यू हैव डेटा विद यू, यू फिट अ रिग्रेशन लाइन ऑन इट, एंड देन यू कैन यूज द लाइन टू एक्सट्रापोलेट. ओके, ऑल्दो स्ट्रिक्टली स्पीकिंग regression lines should not be used for extrapolation, they can only be used for interpolation. लेकिन आप एक्स्ट्रापोलेट कर सकते हैं ये पता लगाने के लिए कि इन द न्यू फ्यूचर क्या डिमांड हो सकती है. ओके, एक रिग्रेशन यूज कर सकते हैं. तो रिग्रेशन एक टेक्निक है, एक मॉडल है जो कि आप यूज कर सकते हैं प्रेडिक्शन के लिए. लेकिन अब अगर आप ये डिसाइड करना चाहते हैं कि आपका बिजनेस किस चीज पे फोकस करना चाहिए, किस पे नहीं फोकस करना चाहिए, आप ये डिसाइड करना चाहते हैं कि आप डिपार्टमेंट स्टोर में किस तरह के आइटम्स हम रखेंगे और किस तरह के बिल्कुल नहीं रखेंगे, तो वो आपकी ये प्रिस्क्रिप्टिव एनालिटिक्स की चीज हो जाएगी. ओके, दैट विल बी अंडर दिस होल idea of prescriptive analytics. So you can see that this is the most difficult thing to do. This is the easiest because all you are doing is generating summary statistics. Okay, like mean, median, mode, standard deviations, variances, things like that. So you've got a lot of tools also available with you which you can use that very easily. But this is where AI comes in a big way in your predictive analytics. So when we teach here a course on analytics, this is what we actually focus on. We try to show them how we can program analytics so as to be able to use it for the purpose of prediction. Okay, so what we can do is we can actually go back to our cycle here and we can try to very quickly look at each one of these aspects one by one or each one of these steps. So, okay, I have time till 11:30. Okay. Okay, so I told you one of the most ignored parts of the entire process is cleaning. So unless and until you clean your data, you will not be able to use it. More importantly, the point is that if you have corrupt or if you have inaccurate data, then you will not be able to take quality decisions. All the decisions that you take will actually be wrong. So quality decisions must be based on good quality data. So first thing is, what do we understand by quality of data? So these are the 5 aspects of quality that we are interested in: validity, correctness, then we have completeness, consistency, and we have uniformity. So validity is basically the degree to which the measures they conform to defined business rules. Okay, so whether the data that you have got with you, right, that is according to the rules that you have framed, right? Then we have correctness. So that talks about the truthfulness of the data. For example, if suppose we are talking about salaries and the salary comes out to be negative, then that is a cause for concern. Okay, so it cannot be negative. So that data is incorrect data. Then we have completeness, wherein all the data that we require, if that is available with us, then we say it is complete. So for example, especially when you are collecting data, it is possible that you miss out on some variables. You may not identify those variables at all, and therefore you don't collect the data. Okay. So is your data complete in every respect? Is every kind of data that you need for your analysis available or not? That is completeness. And then consistency. So basically with consistency we mean is in some sense whether the data that we are expecting to be, let us say, of a particular value or a range is within that range or not. Okay. So for example, if I am conducting, let us say, a remedial class, I would expect the performance of the class to be, let us say, just average or just below average. But if it turns out that there is a person who is performing extremely well there, then there is something wrong. Right? The question is, why did he come for a remedial? So that also becomes what we call an outlier. So there is no consistency in the data anymore. Then of course uniformity, in the sense that the data that is collected is basically measured using the same instrument and across the same scale. So scales, measurement, they are a whole study into itself, and that is something that we will not get into. But everything that we collect, the data that we collect, should be from the same measuring instrument using the same scale. Okay, so for example, if simply you got currency somewhere, you got money somewhere, then in one column you cannot have money being reflected using different currencies. Okay, it should all be in the same currency. So that's very simple way to look at uniformity. But these are aspects which are very important, and we need to be able to look into the data quality very deeply so that we are able to take good decisions. So why is it that the data is dirty in the real world? Because data is generally incomplete. Okay. So for example, if you have questionnaires, your data would necessarily be incomplete, in the sense there would be many people who would not fill out the questionnaire completely. Okay. It is noisy in the sense that people would end up giving you vague values. Okay, so if somebody doesn't want to give his salary, then he might put some vague amount into it. Okay. And then of course it is inconsistent. Right? So in the sense that, for example, people may give dates in different formats, things like that. So that is something that we need to worry about. We need to make sure that is taken care of. So incomplete data comes from non-available data values. Noisy data comes from faulty instruments. Okay. Data transmission errors, and inconsistent data comes from the fact that we have collected data from different data sources, and of course the integrity of the source itself is questionable. Right? So validity can be looked at from different points of view. You can have type constraints, you can have point of view of type constraints, range constraints, mandatory constraints, things like that. So type, all the data should be of the same type. So for example, if you are collecting numeric data, there cannot be string type data there. Then if you want the data to be within a particular range, then that should happen. If we want that some data should be input, that is what we want, we are referring to as mandatory constraints. Then we have uniqueness constraints, in the sense that there are some information which has to be unique across the subjects. For example, if students are giving their roll numbers, then roll numbers of two different students cannot be the same. Okay, so that's uniqueness. Then we have set membership, wherein we want values to come from a set, predefined set, not from anywhere else. We have something called a foreign key constraint, wherein if we put in a data, then that data should have appeared somewhere else first. That is what we refer to as a foreign key. So for example, अगर हम किसी का रोल नंबर डाल रहे हैं किसी एक कोर्स में, कि किसी स्टूडेंट ने कोर्स लिया और वहाँ उसका रोल नंबर डाल रहे हैं, तो उस स्टूडेंट को, वो स्टूडेंट जो है सिस्टम में एग्जिस्ट करना चाहिए, यानी कि हमारे पास कोई और टेबल होने चाहिए, स्टूडेंट टेबल, जिसमें कि उस रोल स्टूडेंट की एंट्री जो है वो होनी चाहिए. तो वो हमारी कहलाती है यूनिकनेस, फॉरेन की कंस्ट्रेंट. Then of course there are two other things which I think we can skip here. So this is what validity is all about. Okay, so these are, in fact, I would not say this covers everything, but it does cover most of the aspects of validity that we are interested in as far as cleaning of data is concerned. Okay, so what kind of errors can come into the data? So we have syntactic errors, we have semantic errors, we have coverage errors. So here in the case of syntactic errors, we can have simple lexical errors wherein the characters that are typed in, they don't make sense. Okay, it is not of the correct format that is expected. Then of course that is the grammar, it doesn't follow the grammar. Then we have semantic, so this is related to the meaning part, wherein we look for contradictions, duplicates, invalid entries, and so on and so forth. And finally, the kind of problems that can be of coverage type, wherein we have missing values, missing rows, you didn't go and collect data from somebody, and then of course you have outliers. So one of the two aspects that you have to be worried about is this missing values and outliers, which most of us actually ignore. Okay, and especially if you are doing some statistical analysis, then these two things will become very important for you, the missing values and the outliers. So here is the here are the steps in the cleaning and preparation process. We have variable identification, we have missing values treatment, we have outlier treatment, we have variable transformation, variable creation. So this this falls in the part of what is called feature engineering. Feature engineering, not future, it is feature, F-E-A-T-U-R-E. So the first thing is that we should be able to identify the variables of interest. In particular, once we have identified the variables, we would be interested in what is the type of variable. Okay, so some of the variables could be used for the purpose of prediction. Some which are being predicted, they are what are the target variables. Then what is the type of data? It could be a string, it could be numeric, it could be anything else, a date, time, and then category. It could be basically discrete or it could be continuous. Okay. So once you've identified the variables, then you need to look at missing data. So missing data is important because it can reduce the power of or fit of a model, and it can lead to a biased model. So that is something that we should avoid. Why are they missed? Mainly because of problems in collection. Okay, data collection and data extraction. So these are some of the things that you would end up seeing missing completely at a random. What it means is that it is one particular variable on which the values are missing. For example, I told you that in a questionnaire there are many people who would not want to disclose their salary. So you will find that salary part is missing for all the entries. Okay. So that is what we call missing completely at random. Missing at random is wherein the values are missed across all the variables in a random fashion. Then missing that depends on unobserved predictors. Unobserved. So you see, it is possible that when you are collecting data on some variable, but that is being influenced by some other variable which you are not talking about at all. Not talking about at all. Okay. So for example, if you are asking a simple question like why is somebody, let us say, having an issue with concentrating in the class, right? So you might be looking at aspects which are not necessarily related to what is happening in the class. Okay, so you might be worried about whether you are able to make the student understand or not, so as to what he is talking about. But the fact that he is not able to concentrate could be dependent on some other factor. Maybe he is not feeling well. Okay, and which you maybe have not taken into account. So there are certain unobserved predictors which create problems, and you have to be worried about that. And then of course we are missing depending on the value itself. So like I told you that for example, if you take the salary, people with high salaries will want to disclose it. People with low salaries would not want to disclose it. Okay. So the fact that somebody is getting a low value on the salary aspect is something that is preventing that value from being fed into the system. So that is what we understand by missing, that depends on the missing value itself. Because the salary is low, people don't want to disclose it. Because the salary is high, people want to boast about it. They want to disclose it. Okay. So that's the value part that we are talking about. So there are a number of ways to handle missing data. One is, in fact, you can classify them as deletion and imputation. So imputation is where you try to fill in the missing data. Deletion is where you get rid of the entries where the data is missed. Okay. So let's just focus on the imputation part. So in the imputation part, essentially, you could do something depending on the nature of data, whether it is continuous or it is categorical. So what are the different ways of imputation? One of the things that you can do is, for the entire set of data that you have with you, you can compute the mean, mode or median, and then you can substitute the missing values with the mean, mode or median. Okay? Or you can do something which is called the LOCF, which is the last observation carried forward. So the last observation tha in the sequence, that is simply carried forward. So it sort of fills in the gaps, right? But you can also do things like linear regression, and which you can use in an interpolation sense. तो आपने linear regression करा, fit कर दिया curve को या straight line को, और उसके बाद आपने interpolate करके सारी जो missing values हैं उनको fill कर दिया. तो ये कुछ तरीके हैं जो कि हम यूज कर सकते हैं, लेकिन कौन सी चीज एक्चुअली एप्लीकेबल है, कौन सी नहीं एप्लीकेबल है, उस पर भी स्टडी करना जरूरी है. इन द सेंस कि आपको सबसे पहले ये देखना जरूरी है कि आपका डेटा जो आया वो उसका सोर्स क्या है. इज इट एन आर्टिफिशियल सोर्स और इज इट अ नेचुरल सोर्स? एंड डिपेंडिंग ऑन द सोर्स ऑफ डेटा you will end up applying a particular technique. So would it make sense to apply the mean, or would it make sense to do something else, right? So for example, you've heard of many situations wherein आपने देखा होगा कि एग्जामिनर्स को हमने पूरा बंडल भेजा, उसका पेपर्स का करेक्ट करने को खो गया, वो कहीं किसी एक लेक में तैरती हुई मिली. तो उस केस में क्या हो, तो सारा जो आपके वो दैट होल थिंग हैज गॉन मिसिंग. सो व्हाट शुड वी डू? So no matter what you do, somebody will benefit, somebody will lose. So the question is, what kind of compromise is acceptable to you? So that is how you are going to fill in the missing values. Okay. So if you don't want any compromise, you will order a retest. Okay, the people will have to come in and give a retest. But otherwise, what do most of these board people do? So a lot of educationists here. What do you think they should do? Huh? Internal marks का average निकाल के देते, external mark में. That's the usual approach that is followed, in the sense that you see the past performance, and based on the past performance you give the marks. So internal में अगर आपने क्या करा, आपने over all the test average निकाल दिया और उसको फिर आपने वहाँ पे carry forward कर दिया उसको. So that is what we refer to as the mean method here. Okay. But then in this averaging, you see somebody is going to be a loser and somebody is going to be a winner. So especially in DI, there's a hugely debatable topic, so as to what should be done and what should not be done. Anyway, so missing data is something that we need to be worried about. But here is a very small example wherein here we are doing interpolation to fill in the data. It's not very clear here, but you can see that with the means we have these spikes. With interpolation we don't have spikes here. Okay, that's the missing part of data. So mean में क्या हो रहा है कि हम average को fill in कर रहे हैं, तो average से वो spikes generate हो रहे हैं सारे. So that's not a very good way of substituting for missing values. Then the next point that we need to focus on is the outliers. So outliers are basically observation that deviate from the general pattern. Okay, the general pattern. So which kind of descriptive statistic do you think outliers affect most? Mean, that's right. The mean. The mean. Of course, your deviations would also, variances would also change, but nevertheless, outliers are something that we need to deal with. So the primary thing that we need to understand is why the outlier happened and possibly get rid of it. Okay, so there could be data entry errors, there could be measurement error, there could be experimental error, there could be an intentional outlier. Why? So many a times we collect data on very sensitive issues which people don't want to divulge, and they fill in false information. Okay, so if you ask everybody in the class here, have you understood everything? Everybody will say yes, right? So everybody's understood everything. But when it comes to the crunch, taking an exam, then you get to know how much people have understood. Okay, so there are intentional outliers, then there are data processing errors, sampling errors, and of course something which may occur naturally. Yeah. So these are the causes. The impact is something that we have already understood. So the means, they vary, the standard deviation would vary, right? And of course the problem is that it increases the error variance, reduces the power of statistical tests. They are, especially if they are non-randomly distributed, they can decrease the niceness of all distributions that you have with your data. Okay, they can bias, and then of course they can impact your other statistical tests like the ANOVA and things like that. So how do you detect? You basically use visualization techniques, or you look at the interquartile range, you use capping methods. For example, you say anything that is out of the 5th and the 95th percentile is an outlier. Okay, something which is more than 3 standard deviations away is an outlier. Okay, but in general, the examination of these outliers would depend much on the business or the context in which you are applying. It is possible that what you are seeing statistically as an outlier is actually not an outlier. Okay. So, for example, if you are looking at the performance of students in a class, there would be outliers in the sense there would be some students who would be performing extremely well. Most of them would be average, but there would be some who would be performing extremely poorly also. Okay, so should you treat them as outliers and then do your grading, or should you keep them and then they would do your grading? Because these are the guys who will spoil your grading, especially if you are doing relative grading. So if you are doing relative grading, these fellows, the fellows stay, absolutely exceptional, and the fellows, got an F grade, are getting an F grade, they are the ones who will spoil your relative grading. Okay, so one fellow will end up getting an A, and everybody relative to that grading will end up getting, let us say, a B or a C or a C minus, and that would be disastrous. So relative grading also has its disadvantages. How many of you, or for how many of you in your schools do you do relative grading? Nobody does it. Everybody does absolute grading. So you have your slabs, mark slabs, and then you do your grading accordingly. So that's more absolute grading, but that avoids the pitfalls that you have with relative grading. But relative grading is a much better way of, putting the class in perspective. But of course, it increases competition. So if you want to get rid of cheating, let us say in the assignments and things like that, the best way is to introduce relative grading. Okay, so you can also, here also you can delete, you can impute, you can transform, you can do what is called binning. So basically you take a whole range, right? And for that range, you decide on one value and substitute that value. Or you can treat the outliers separately. Okay. But more importantly, with your cleaning, you can also do what is called feature engineering, wherein you can actually do things like variable transformation and you can do something like variable creation. So let's try to understand this in this particular context of these two figures. For example, here the differences are not very clear to you, right, in these bars. But for example, now if you transform the data into, let's say, a logarithmic, using a logarithmic scale, then the differences become very evident, right? So this is simple log transformation, and for which you can, wherein then you can see the differences. Okay, you can also do what is called feature creation. So what you do is you add variables, and those variables could be merely to, in some way clarify on what is already available. For example, you can add fields representing derived information. So what kind of derived information can be there? For example, अगर किसी ने कोई अपना date of birth दे दिया, right? आप एक field add कर सकते हैं age. तो age is derived from date of birth, right? So that is something which you can add. So that is something that we call feature creation. So you can do feature engineering and also treat your data, clean up your data, right? So I've just given you an overview. There are a large number of tools which are available. So I think just as you had seen tools for visualization, data visualization, there is one by Google called OpenRefine, which is an excellent tool for data cleaning. And then of course you have the Trifacta Wrangler, which again is something that you can use. So there is a free Wrangler which is available here, which you can make use of to clean your data. So this OpenRefine is pretty good that way, and you could use that. Right? So in fact now this is the next topic that I wanted to get into, data exploration. And but I think the practical aspect of data exploration, especially when it comes to data visualization, has already been covered here. So you know some of the tools which are there for data visualization. But what I wanted to really talk about here is, especially when you talk about visualization, is what is the kind of visualization to use when? Okay. So that's a very interesting field. In fact, in our big data course that we have here, we have a whole lot of units devoted just to data visualization, and wherein we try to see those kind of things. So in fact, that is precisely what I was talking about when we talked about that first flip analysis. तो flip analysis जो हमने शुरू में देखी थी, that is a kind of visual exploration. Okay, so is this. So this is also a kind of visual exploration which tells you what happened by way of what happened in different constituencies. Okay, जो different constituencies थी, उन constituencies में क्या हुआ, किसको क्या सीट मिली, वो भी है. So this is also a form of visual exploration. Okay, but this is good in the sense that because it is superimposed on a map, you see the actual pattern of voting. Okay, so South में BJP was wiped out completely, but everywhere else you can see it's all saffron. So you know. Visual exploration. So visualization is a very powerful technique, but the problem is that you need to use the correct visuals to be able to get the right information. Okay. So I think I will stop here, and if there are any questions, please. Yeah.
Sir, is there any tool available or any platform available to convert the unstructured data into structured data automatically?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
Because you see, when you say that you got unstructured data, there is no clue about what kind of structure can be imposed. Okay. So
we need to do it only manually.
For example, नहीं, you can do it. जैसे मैंने आपको बताया था example web का, web search engines का. So they do what is called web scraping. So the software, what it does is it simply runs through the text. Okay, it runs through the entire text, and then it is able to then determine what are the keywords that are there. Okay, and it is able to use those keywords to index into your document for search. So for example, जब भी आप कोई search keywords वहाँ type करते हैं Google में, तो वो keywords जो हैं, वो keywords वो अपने database में जाके वो search करता है, और फिर वहाँ से जितने भी web pages उस कीवर्ड कंटेन करते हैं उनके लिंक्स वो पेज रैंक के हिसाब से आपको दिखा देता है. ठीक है, तो वो कीवर्ड मैचिंग होती है. लेकिन इसमें और भी, जैसे क्योंकि वेब पेजेस का एग्जांपल मेरे को लेना नहीं चाहिए क्योंकि वो डेटा सेमी स्ट्रक्चर्ड होता है, तो जितने भी ब्राउजर्स होते हैं वो पीछे एक स्ट्रक्चर क्रिएट कर लेते हैं, एंड दैट स्ट्रक्चर इज व्हाट इज कॉल्ड द डोमेन ऑब्जेक्ट मॉडल और द DOM. And that DOM, it is able to traverse using automatically using different tools to be able to determine what kind of data is present in your web page. Okay, but with a purely unstructured information, piece of information, that would become very difficult. For example, let me tell you, let's take the example of video. So when you get a video stream, what do you get? What are you seeing? At best, you are seeing a frame of pixels, right? So a frame of pixels. So if you got, let's say your video is playing at 30 frames per second, you're getting 30 frames of pixels depending on the resolution. If it is at 180p, then you're getting that many pixels in each frame. Okay, so in a full HD you would get, let's say 1080p pixels on one frame. अब वो पिक्सल्स क्या है? दो पिक्सल्स, वन पिक्सल इज वन पिक्चर एलिमेंट. what is the information contained there? Only an RGB value, red green blue value. What sense do you make out of a red green blue value? Right? How do you use that information to recognize faces? I mean, that's something which is extremely complex that you are talking about. See the information that you have with you. It's just RGB, 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 one frame. RGB, 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 one frame.
Data mining can make unstructured data into a structured one.
Data mining is not going to convert structured data, the unstructured data into unstructured data. At best, if you have data which is, let us say, partly structured, it can be used to, discover things like associations, relationships. So if you want to do data mining also, then you need some kind of structure in your data. It is not exactly that you can work with unstructured data.
So another feature which has been added in this big data analytics is the fifth V, that is the value.
Value, yes.
And this value has make the whole analytics more complex when specifically we talk about the business point of view. Because there the values are in conflict to each other. Like the marketing people has different values, the production people have different values. So in that way, how the analytics see to it?
See, ultimately, what value you can extract from data, that is dependent on context. तो मैंने आपको पहले ही बताया था कि अगर हम कोई भी automated systems बना रहे हैं, ठीक है, that automated system can automate things only to an extent. Okay, in the sense that you can go from data to information, right? But when it comes to decision making, when it comes to interpretation within a context, then you need expertise. Okay, and that expertise can only come in manual forms. तो आपने डेटा को प्रेजेंट कर दिया. अगर कोई ऑटोमेटेड सिस्टम है, वो किस तरह से डेटा आपको प्रेजेंट करेगा उसको पता नहीं है, अनलेस एंड अनटिल इट इज कस्टमाइज्ड टू योर रिक्वायरमेंट्स. It will present data in a very generic way, but how you are going to interpret that data becomes very important, and that has to be done in context, right? And that is one reason why we can't get rid of that human element.
Sir,
Huh.
I want to ask one question. Okay. Sir, is there any difference between analytics and analysis, or both are same?
Let us say analysis is what it used to be, is what is called analytics now. But the term analytics has been more applied to, things like model building and, more to predictive forms rather than other forms. Wherein the term analysis earlier referred more to the descriptive form. Okay. So when you analyze something, especially for example, you are from chemistry or zoology? Chemistry. So for example, when you analyze, let's say you got, your something from your spectral analysis or whatever. So what would you do there? You would do more of descriptive statistics. You would try to understand what is happening. You will not try to talk about what can happen, right, or what should happen. So analytics is more in that domain of prediction and prescription. Okay, the rest is what you are very familiar with, the analysis. Okay, so maybe I don't know. If there is another session for me, I can talk about visualization, and then I would want to talk about the analytics life cycle. So wherein, in fact, now analytics is everywhere. And in education, what is the kind of analytics that you would be interested in? So that is learning analytics.
Thank you so much, sir.